Look at you guys. I'm not really great with microphones because I'm tall, goofy, and lanky. And I talk with my hands all the time. I'm not your average speaker, I guess. I'm a little weird. Been okay with it for a few years now. My story starts pretty rugged. We'll try to get into it a little bit, but you know, the last couple of days I do a lot of these seminars. I want you just to look around you for a minute. Look who's next to you in this room. Look at the ages. We're all over the board here. Now, I don't know if it's just our first annual, so we're getting a virtual cornucopia of different species in our little seminar. But you know, I'll go to a seminar with 20 years. This is our 20th year. And it's all the same people over and over again. Not that I don't love them, but look at what's happening here. Look at what's happening. Last night I watched that genius of a woman. Is she in here? Good Lord have mercy, what a voice on her, huh? Circle inside of a circle. And last night I left here probably a lot like you guys. Goose pimples and all refreshed and charged up. Could have walked to the top of Bell Rock if I wanted to. And I got home, turned on the TV, God help us all. From a spiritual conference to the TV, something ironic there. But circles everywhere last night. 6 of them. Inside these circles. It was the opening day of the Olympics yesterday, where the world, for the first time in a very long time, came together. And I thought about us in this room. And I'm wondering, by the time I'm done today, maybe you'll have some impact of what exactly the meaning of you being here is. Whether that be for you, or being the selfish dog that I am, all for me. You see, I've survived some things that I'm going to tell you about that, quite frankly, are pissing off the medical community. I'm kind of okay with it. But it's taken me a while to realize it. There are people every day with a fully functioning immune system keeling over left and right. I get it. 7 years ago, ironically, February 16th is my anniversary day of my diagnosis, where I was diagnosed in a 20-second moment in an emergency room in Charlotte, North Carolina, with 6 weeks to live. Last gentleman up here struck a chord with me as I sat back there getting ready to come up and speak to you guys. See, because I never have a plan. I don't write anything, I don't have an outline, I don't practice and rehearse. I just come out here and have decided I'd be as real as I can about a very humbling story. It's going to take some vulnerability from me and from you. I'm going to stretch you a little bit in your tolerance. But one thing dawns on me here about this human triumph, this oneness, right? The largest after effect of a near-death experience, the most common denominator of now 50 years of research, is we all come back with this oneness. A mass delusion, right? 20 million of us all had an encounter, an experience we can't explain. Although everybody's got an explanation. It's that DMT in your brain. It just pukes in your brain. You're done. It's nothing. It's a hallucination. Explain to me how 20 million people are coming back thinking the same, doing the same, with the same callings, the same physiological, the same psychological, and physical after effects, even timed down to the very day. You gotta pay attention. But I do get one thing about this world. We want to hear about the light, right? People want to hear about the guy in the light for me, and I don't blame them. I still don't understand it. But February 16th, I was diagnosed terminal with 6 weeks to live. Just like that. Whew. I'm sorry, it takes my breath away still. I'm 7 years out. I'm still a virgin in the realms of spiritual awakening. I still have a lot to learn, and I still run from it, like some of us. But it dawned on me today when I came up and thought, sitting in the back room, and this gentleman sat up here and said, "Get your affairs in order." It's not a line from a movie. Of course it is, but it's the very line that I heard. And how do you possibly explain that to another human being? It's like talking to children sometimes, right? Why can't we teach our teenagers anything? Why can't we do that? Why can't they listen? Yeah, sure. So don't I. We have to have our own experience, don't we? Don't we? We are nothing without the emotion of an experience. So for the love of all things holy, imagine the evolution of our species has gone to hiding an emotion. And then you walk into a place like this for 3 days, and you can proverbially unzip the fly of your soul. Right? Sorry for the visual. If we can't laugh at ourselves, who can we laugh at? I'm happy to let you laugh at me. But it's a real deal, that experience, that great emotion. We remember where you were on 9/11, don't you? Your first kiss, prom, the death of a loved one. Emotion stores memories differently. No challenge, no change. We've heard it 100 times. Now I suspect somewhere in my 7-year terminal race from death, I'm famous for nothing in life is easy. It's not supposed to be. But after the last 7 years, I could use a couple easy days here and there. But like they taught us in the Ranger Battalion, the only easy day was yesterday. So, get your affairs in order. I sat in an emergency room. It was the first time this female doctor had ever told somebody they were terminal. And we cried together. Big epiphanies. I had been sick for a year, 2 years, lost a lot of weight, even lost my job for the first time in my life. So, one of the difficulties about having one of these experiences, potentially, is that we have to talk about maybe who we were to understand who we've become. As Jeff and some of the folks mentioned, I was a 1,000-mile-an-hour young man with my hair on fire, all about career, success, money, and women. Pretty much how us young men are raised. Sorry, fellas, that is the nature of the beast. Or at least it was for me. I was very successful in my early youth as a combat medic in the airborne squad, and eventually became a helicopter paramedic. Solely because it made me look a little bit like Tom Cruise, made me feel like it. I certainly didn't look like it. But I got the flight suit, right? How you doing? Wasn't good enough for my ego, so after my military indoctrination, a couple combat tours, and a couple of crazy experiences in the military I wrote some about in my book, I came out of the military and joined up in the family business. My brother had been a chief of police, my father a criminal investigator. So I went right alongside everybody else and became a police officer. Within 4 years, to give you an idea what kind of a knucklehead I was, within 4 years I had excelled through the chain of command and become the youngest chief of police in the country at 23 years of age. I know everybody goes, oh, you probably should go, oh. Just because I got hired as the youngest chief of police in the country doesn't mean I probably should have. But here's who I was. I got tired of police work. I got tired of death. I got tired of dealing with people at the worst times of their life, quite honestly. Just wasn't who I was. I made a plan to exit police work to find something more fulfilling. I was addicted to police work. So prior to my departure from law enforcement, after a year-long investigation The day before I resigned, I arrested the entire board of selectmen in my town, the mayor, and the road agent for embezzlement, and resigned the next day. What an idiot. There had been an ongoing debacle about some embezzlement issues in a small town. And when I took over, there were parts of this town that the police were told, you can't even drive over there. They'll throw Molotov cocktails on your car. And it was the Wild West. Problem was, it started from inside. So that was who I was. Larger than life. Some of you may say, wow. It was a crazy run, but I did what I thought was right. And I moved on into my next career field, which was private investigative work. I became quickly known. I found Jesse Raphael's son. And I became somewhat quickly notorious as the guy who could find anybody. Give me your social security number and your date of birth, and you could not hide. So I taught around New England, lecture halls like this on how to find people. And sure enough, I got recruited into the automobile industry, into the finance angle, where I spent the next 18 years making tons of money. Head getting bigger, bigger, bigger. Rolexes, Gucci's, trips, money, 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 money. Exhausting. And then get your affairs in order, just like that. Less than 20 seconds. Do you know a human hug for 20 seconds, if you hold it for 20 seconds, actually releases an endorphin that hits in 20 seconds time every atom of your body? That's how long it takes. Any kind deed, even anger, releases it, right? But it all takes the body about 20 seconds. And it always just seemed to come down to those moments of life that change everything in a blink of an eye. Or 20 seconds. I didn't know what to do. I went home, got my affairs in order, but all I could think about was my family. Now my career and lifestyle had left them well behind. You can't keep up with me. I moved all over the country, I traveled all over the world, all to make myself feel better about who I was. I made $1 million by the time I was 31 years old. Diagnosed terminal at 40, I had nothing left. Nothing. I spent the next 2 weeks letting go, calling family, preparing. I wanted to go home. My brother and sister came and got me, made the long journey, drove me from North Carolina to Burlington, Vermont, where they tracked every hospital on the way, not sure if I'd make it. I was unconscious the whole journey. Lodged me in the hospital to get my hospice referral in the new state and wait my time in intensive care. I signed a do not resuscitate order, made my peace with family who showed up. Some never did. I know that's rough, we gotta talk about it. People have to be respected for how they handle death, don't they? Spoken like somebody who's never been there. I can tell you one thing from a selfish bastard that I was, full of career, me, all of my life. That moment, that 20 seconds where you're told, get your affairs in order, the only thing I cared about was everybody around me. Just like that. Couldn't change it, still can't. Drives me crazy. It's a real deal. Every single near-death experiencer comes back saying one thing: I don't fear death, I embrace it. But there's a little bit of a catch-22 here. It's bigger than that. It's constantly whispering. What I experienced there, I have yet to understand fully, nor have I been able to compare it to anything in my logistical framework of reference, and I've done a lot of crap in my life. I've seen enough death for 3 lifetimes. and it became a cold, uncaring thing. One of my last events in police work, to give you an idea of how we handle death, from combat and the military to police work, I went to a fatal car accident. 2 cops sitting on the side of the road, young college kid driving at night, 2 o'clock in the morning, was out getting pizza. Pizza's on the front seat, goes around a corner, pizza slides off, he tries to grab the pizza, dies in a car accident. Here comes the chief of police. Too bad I didn't have my flight suit on still, right? I still thought I was cooler than cool. I pull up at the fatal accident, and there's 2 of my police officers eating pizza. What's he gonna do with it? That's what they told me. Probably 2 days later that I arrested a 78-year-old woman for a 3-day bender, drunk, chasing her drunk husband, 82 years old, around the house, stabbing him multiple times over a 3-day period, but because of their age and drunkenness, they just never had the power to finish. So we arrested them. Her and her bright blue moo-moo got into the back of my police cruiser. This was the day before I arrested the Board of Selectmen. And as I was driving away, the 78-year-old woman swearing me up and down from the back seat, I suddenly was embraced by this warmth, this like a liquid. And it was her peeing down the back of my neck. Tough job, police work, right? But, bang, off I went, on to the next career choice. And then 20 years later, I'm fighting for my life and how different things can be. So, I'll tell you a little bit about my experience. I was in intensive care in Fletcher Allen Hospital in Burlington. I thought it was a dream. Realest dream I'd ever experienced. And clearly from the very second I woke up, something had changed. Although it would take me several years and several people a lot of confusion to understand it all, still don't understand it all. First of all, let me start off by saying I'm not a near-death experience expert. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. I'm just some average guy who would have told you were crazier than a shithouse rat if you told me you'd had a near-death experience 5 years ago. Complete skeptic. Not because I didn't believe in God or heaven. I just didn't have time. You know what I mean? Hey, I appreciate your talk about death. I'm gonna go have a beer. I don't know. But boom, all of a sudden it happens to you and there you are, right? So, all I experienced, there was no tunnel, there was no, there was this big giant black expanse. Oh, I'm getting goosebumps already. There was a vibration or a humming, there was a breeze, and there was an odor. Don't ever remember that in a dream, so, you know, but I rationalize like the best of us. There it is, this big giant expanse. And all I know is it's endless. It's talking to me. I can feel. And off in the distance is this glowing red arc. And my first thought was, it looked like the very edge of a volcano. The red, you know, it arced around. I couldn't see where it ended. It was very far away. This peaceful feeling, the smell, the odor. It was like, gosh, I have 100 metaphors for it, none of them are good. But like the last day of school, right? You're like, what the hell do I do? That light either moved to me or I moved towards it. I'm not going to tell you I got the answers to that one, but the next thing I knew, I was standing on it like it was this line on the floor. In fact, I was standing over it. Good news, it wasn't a volcano. You'd think you'd be scared to death, right? But it was the first thought out of my thought process, seeing this, you know, glow off to the distance. And you'll understand in a minute. There I was, dangling over the edge of this thing. There's no lava and brimstone and fire. It's just more black. But there's one speck of light. Crackling. Getting bigger, bigger. And it's swirling counterclockwise. Definitively counterclockwise. Don't know why that's important. Looked like a donut eventually. It was huge. It looked out of my reach, but of course, I'm a boy. I wanted to touch it, right? What is it with boys? I think my last words on this planet will be, I wonder what happens when I touch this. But I did, I wanted to touch it. But it was just, the brighter it got, the more it snapped and crackled, and that donut hole was like, what the hell's in there? And everything seemed to be going into that donut hole and recirculating back over the top. And it was like I totally was downloaded with all these understandings of how energy worked and what that was. And the next thing I know, of course, the stereotypic, right? A face starts forming in the light. Of course there's a face in the light. This is a near-death experience story. But that donut hole literally starts changing. And the light blue streaks that showed definition and direction started showing highlights of his face. It eventually took over the whole light. And it was an aged, weathered, ancient, familiar face. The face of God. That's all I could think of. Didn't understand it. I was just so happy. I can never, although I love writing about it, I can never probably give you the words to explain the peace that I felt in this place, this dream. Then there were words. Of course there were words, right? You gotta have words. It's God. So I thought. Simple. A question. A question from me, from God. Are you ready? Right? Sorry, I've always wanted to do that. Are you ready? That was it. There was no ambiguity at all. He had almost a shit-eating grin on his face. Sorry to explain God that way. I don't mean any disrespect. But he had this little smirk like, are you ready? Now, I had signed a DNR, said goodbye, planned my funeral. There's a couple reasons why. You'll understand it in a minute. But I said, no, I'm not. Wasn't quite as no, I'm not. But it was everything. I could feel it in the marrow of my bones. His talk in the very fiber of my hair. It was wetter than water. It was the realest thing I've ever experienced to this day. No, I'm not. Just like that. Never even thought about it. But I remember thinking, did I say that? But I did. He smiled more. And the last words were this. Haunts me to this day. Let me try not to break up your speaker and break up Dave. There's something important you're supposed to do. No specifics. It's God. Why would he be specific? Right? You don't have a Post-it note up there? A map? No, just something important you're supposed to do. And then the boy took over, and I touched it. I reached out and touched his face. What I assume is the face of God. I had given up everything. And I'm touching the face of God. He smiled so bright. Light just poured from him. I could feel everything. I thought my teeth were going to vibrate out of my head. There was such a vibration. The breeze increased, the odor increased. That humming, I can still hear it. And then I was traveling. His face morphed into a million, if not billions of faces. It seemed to go on forever. Black, white, Asian, just kept morphing. Like the Michael Jackson video. You guys ever remember that video? I'm like, what, am I in a video? billions and billions of faces, all as one. I saw a brief glimpse of valleys and mountains in my volcano. And the next thing I knew, I woke up in my bed. I whipped back the sheets. Now, I couldn't walk when I came into the hospital 3 weeks earlier. I got out of bed and I walked with my Johnny and my rear end hanging out. No flight suits for me. And I walked down to the nurse's station and never even looked up. I have something important I'm supposed to do. I need to see all my doctors, and I need to see them right now. Thank you very much. I'm in room 205. Turned around and walked back. The old butt crack swinging. By then, of course, the nurse had turned around and here's the guy who couldn't walk in a coma. I went back, got in my bed, got the sheets off. And I waited. Seemed like instantly, right? 12 doctors. Couldn't be 10, 11, 9. Had to be 12. Came in, made a nice little arc around my bed. Every one of them doing this. Didn't speak yet. When they all quieted down, I suddenly, for the first time, started understanding I could feel things from them. And I was like, oh shit. But I had something important I was supposed to do, right? That's all I said. I told them I had a dream. And I told them in that dream I touched the face of God, and he said I'm supposed to do something important, and I'd really like to know, sir, ma'am, what we can do to save my life. I'm in. 100% in. Get out of my way. They all took their time, went through, it's going to be a haul. I never heard a negative. It's all positive. And we began life-saving treatment. I tore up my DNR. And I spent the next year in a chemo treatment to get rid of multiple diseases that had popped up. You see, February 16th, I was a married, crazy, egotistical male diagnosed with end-stage AIDS. Just like that. 20-second moment. You want to know what my first response when I was told I was dying of AIDS? You'll love it. What an idiot. I'm a little rough on myself, but I forgive myself. It's part of the deal. My first response when told by this 24-year-old intern, first time ever telling somebody, tears in her eyes, I'm holding her hand to comfort her, to tell me to go home and get my affairs in order. And my first response was, but I'm not gay. Does anybody in this room know what the fastest growing population of new HIV infections is?
Heterosexual males.
Say?
Heterosexual males.
Close. Anybody?
Female.
Bingo. There are 37 million people infected with HIV in this world. 37 million. 48%. Did you hear me? 48% are women ages 13 to 24 years of age. You want to write that one down? I think it's important. 35 years ago, we stuffed this into the gay disease, didn't we? Partially because there wasn't a damn thing we could do about it. Doctors watched patients die. There wasn't a thing that they could do. Now we can. Things have changed. By the time your knees hit the floor tonight for your nightly prayer, 416 babies will be diagnosed. Want to talk about the gay disease? Anybody want to take a stab at the second fastest growing population? And no, it's not heterosexual men. Anybody? Senior citizens, 55 and older, are now the second fastest growing population of HIV. Welcome to sex ed and Viagra. Right? Don't give them a glass and give them a pill. It's awful. I talk to people, 500 people at a time. There are less than 3 people every time who know those statistical facts. And our question was, when we wrote our book, how is this possible? It's been 36 years. 37 million are infected. But here's the kicker. Remember the Holocaust? The Jewish Holocaust? 6 million people. Horrible. 36 million people have died of HIV and AIDS. More or less because a good portion of them are too afraid to get tested. If you are tested, the CDC recommends every human being on the planet, regardless of your risk factors, be tested for HIV and hepatitis C. You are not routinely tested in your blood tests. There are 53 things tested in your routine blood. Did you know not one of them is an infectious disease? How did we even do that? How's that even possible? Today, we have medications for HIV folks and hepatitis C folks. You can cure hepatitis C. But now hepatitis C has killed more people in the United States than HIV and AIDS. 1 in 30 baby boomers. I'm sure to test your cholesterol so I can give you some cholesterol medication, but I won't test you for something you could have spread to 10 other people. Got an issue with it. So I wrote my book, started a charity. We donate most of the money from my book to the charity. And the charity is about social empowerment in collaboration to create positive social change. Being the typical, where's my flight suit idiot attitude, I've walked into the Arizona State House after marching through the US Capitol demanding action. And I prayed and worked every day to build a platform so I could take people with me because I am nothing without you. They won't listen to somebody without a platform. But they did. On August 7th, my birthday of this year, the state of Arizona opened bill folder number 110. It's called While You're There. Sounded better than the Tremblay law. Too much ego for me. The law says this: anytime you take my blood in the state of Arizona for your 53 tests, of which I don't even know what the hell they are, I, as a patient, now have the right to ask for an HIV and hepatitis C test at no charge, without discussing my risk factors, without shaming myself, without craziness and questions and sexual preferences. There's no more boxes that we are going to allow with a disease that's killed 36 million people. These are your daughters, folks. I can't rely on the gay transgender population to pull this up the hill. It has to be the people who think they don't have anything to worry about. That's the example we need to set as human beings for our children, for ourselves. We've seen crazy stuff this year, haven't we? We have politically, I'm not political at all. I doubt most people in here are. But we have auctioned off people's lives this year. We've put people in fear of losing everything. And I witnessed it in Washington, D.C., and I had to go out and throw up in my Capitol on the front lawn of my the majesty of my veteran patriot soul, visiting that place and watching what I saw during that healthcare debacle. Unbelievable. But we can learn from it. We are taught, we are led and instructed to divide. And everyone in this room knows it's horseshit. Thank God for rooms like this. But you know what's something else, guys? Here's a little tidbit. You know my face of God? Exactly 2 years, Christmas time, after my dream. The something important you're supposed to do carrot without any defining instructions. No, I'm just kidding. 2 years, I get a calendar at Christmas from my family. It's a big stipend every year. All excited, right? I should have been on the cover that year. I just lived through a, terminal diagnosis. I didn't get the cover. However, I did open it up to my birth year 2 years after, which just happens to be the average amount of time it takes for a near-death experiencer to come out of the ether and start talking about his experience. But there it was, my birth month, August. And there was a black and white grainy picture of a man. I suddenly couldn't breathe, fell to my knees, my family all around going, boy, he has changed a lot, but this is a little overboard. That grainy black and white picture was of a man. It was the same man in the light 2 years earlier. And it happened to be my grandfather who died 22 years before I was born. I have no idea why it would make its way onto that calendar. Maybe I had seen his pictures, I don't know, as a youth, I do not recall. But it became a vertical perception of something, it doesn't take long to put two and two together when you Google, just go ahead and Google, some dead dude in the light said I got something important to do. It'll pretty much come up with a near-death experience. And then your brain goes crazy again. I spent the next couple of years throughout my journey. You see, the problem was I was diagnosed so late. I wasn't diagnosed early. By the time I was diagnosed, I had no functioning immune system at all. Probably important to get tested, right? Just saying. By the time I was diagnosed, I had cancer, tuberculosis, a bone marrow disease that was in every organ. My organs were shutting down. They're called opportunistic infections. It was too late. But I also didn't have medical insurance when I was diagnosed, which meant what? Pre-existing condition. Imagine laying there in that bed thinking that. Oh shit. Guess what happened while I was talking to the dude in the light? Obamacare passed while I was laying in the ICU. I woke up and suddenly pre-existing conditions weren't an issue. I had a chance. It's that real for some people, guys. We've heard it, the elderly. You gotta eat, you're gonna take your pills. It's a real deal. So, that was my story. Some crazy guy in a light tells us you're supposed to do something important. Still haven't figured it out. Our book, I wrote it in about 6 days. Never read it again until I did the audio book, which I highly recommend. Very spiritual experience to read your own book. I cried 12 times the first day. Tough stuff to write this kind of stuff. I've got another book coming out. It's called Dying for Forgiveness. And it is about something not many of us want to talk about. I still have end-stage AIDS. It'll get me. Today, after 7 years, I have 1/19 of your immune system. Taken me 7 years. I shouldn't be within 6 feet of any human being on the face of this earth. Not because I'm a danger to you. You're a danger to me. You're carrying things you don't even know you're carrying. Sorry. So, we continue our journey of trying to, how do I not make this corny? I suddenly was a ego-driven career guy to a philanthropist. I had to look that up. What the hell is a... Somebody just called me a philanthropist, that son of a... Oh, thank you very much. No one grows up saying, I want to be a philanthropist. I take no money from our companies, and we opened up a publishing company called Tremor Books. Because we got tired of publishers taking 75% of your endorsements after you pay them thousands of dollars for the privilege of you getting a couple dollars on every book sold. I give $1 of my book to charity. So we started a publishing company with the goal of, it happened in a year after I published my book, we hit the bestseller list internationally on Amazon. And we've stayed there for 67 weeks. And it was my dream and my goal to try to pay back, to send it back down, to help someone else find their voice. So every day, I wake up, and you know what my only job is? I try to help as many people as I can, every day, as hard as I can, as far as I can, until I collapse. Then I sleep fast, I get up quick, and I do it all over again. Somewhere in my journey, that man in the light, that important something I was supposed to do, probably happened standing right there in that light. I was terminal for a couple reasons. No medical insurance, big one. But probably the biggest one was shame. I was diagnosed with HIV and AIDS. Bigger than life, larger than life, fool that I had been. All about success, career, speed, pats on the back. Diagnosed with one of the most untalked about diseases in mankind. And the irony that we don't talk about it is exactly why it spreads. How funny. People want to know. Anybody in the room want to know how I got my disease? Be honest. It's not something you ask a cancer, is it? Hey, how'd you get that cancer? Maybe my answer should be the same as the answer with cancer. Poor choices. But I don't look at it that way. My friend Dave, the cameraman back there, loves my answer to my, how did you get your disease? I loved too much. And I make no apologies for it. But I needed to right there in that light, didn't I? Or we would have taken not one more step. Not one more 20-second moment. Since then, I found purpose, and a love was bequeathed to me. I think it was after my 8th surgery. This has been a journey. You read the book, you'll understand. I don't want to sit here and talk about. I have had 9 cancer surgeries to remove rectal carcinoma. Anybody want to even think about one rectal cancer surgery? Look, people tell me all the time, you're the most positive person in the world. No, I'm not. I'm as real as you, and behind closed doors with the love of my life, I'm a little more vulnerable. I tell my story because I think it's important. I didn't know 48% of the population was females. I didn't know it was growing that fast. I just assumed, like many, it was not a disease I had to worry about. And I know some of us in this room have done the same thing. But it's time to make a difference. It's gonna require exactly what's in this room. A oneness, a collaborative effort. And I've been blessed up until now to have found the love of my life, Carol Begnosh. I wrote a lot about her in my book. She is my rock and my guiding light. And the synchronicity of us finding each other, you'd have to read it. It's a great story. My book just isn't about pain. It's, to me, one of the greatest love stories out there. I just didn't have any more left. It's been 7 years. But every day, every single day I wake up and I wait for the sunrise. Like a kid. Like a child. Every night, I wait for the sunset, and both times of that day, my only words are thank you for one more day. And it became that simple. My story isn't unlike a lot of other people's. other than this pesky little thing the doctors don't want to talk about. People's story like Jeff and the courage and the triumph and people going, boy, that damn immune system, right? Did you see that? What happened to this person? They had stage 4 cancer, it's gone. We don't understand the immune system. It's a miracle. This immune system, that's the first words out of the doctor's mouth at the Mayo Clinic. That immune system, Okay, Aunt Jemima. Then I come along. I didn't have one. Explain that one. The real reason I survive every single day with 20th of your immune system is just the gratitude of it all. It's events like this. It's moments of unity, of oneness, and I take every bit of it. These are the rare moments of our day. But I don't need to tell you that, and I'm going to finish up here by ending with this. Is there anyone in this room, by a show of hands, who hasn't had a spiritually transformative event? Raise your hand if you've not had one. One. You're here because you're all badasses. Sorry. You want to talk about human triumph? The raw fact that you've had a transformative event makes you no different than me who's had a near-death experience. You have all fallen, and you all got up. That's the common denominator of what we're doing here, folks. The special moments aren't some nitwit up here making you laugh, making you cry, and making you think. It's the connection sitting right next to you in this room. It is the oneness. I hope this weekend you understand one thing. Because I see you guys at the restaurants and walking around the lobby. I'm afraid to talk to anybody, right? My phone now. There is nobody in this room that will hurt any of you. But there is somebody in this room that might have every answer you ever looked for. Are you willing to take the risk? Say hello to people. That's how I want to end this. I'd like you to all stand up for a second. Just stand up for a second. Grab each other's hands. There is nobody in this room that hasn't had to reach down and find the courage to pick themselves up, just like me. But when I can't do it, I come talk to a bunch of folks like you. And I find a way. Look at what you've done here. Jeff Olson, Tracy Cohen, look at what you've created. Look around you, behind you. These are your brothers and your sisters. Meet them. Someone in this room has a key for you, and it may not just be one. Please pay attention to your path this weekend and enjoy every 20-second moment. Thank you.